That's not fair.
Okay. Good afternoon. Once again. The affirmative team brought up the fact that Congress, that Congress has no limit on how long they can be in office. That is an incorrect piece of evidence. The Congress does only have, I believe, it's 6 years for Senate and House of Representatives, where they debate on the choices of what we bring up and what we want them to put in. Whereas we do put them in office, so it is incorrect to say that our opinion's not heard and that they're just randomly selected. We do put them in office to hear our opinions. The affirmative team also brings up the idea of abuse of surveillance by the NSA. I have evidence here to prove otherwise. According to Robert McNamara, the law partner in Manet, he said Executive Order 1233 provides the intelligence agency may collect or retain disseminate information concerning United States persons only in accordance with procedures approved by the Attorney General. It prohibits physical surveillance of a United States person abroad to collect foreign intelligence except to obtain significant information that cannot reasonably be acquired by other means. Mandates that when intelligence agencies do legitimately target U.S. persons, they use the least intrusive collection techniques feasible. Also, continuing on the Attorney General part that was brought up in the previous evidence, the Attorney General does prevent abusive surveillance because, according to the same author, electronic surveillance of the U.S. persons overseas will only occur with the approval of the Attorney General, and that such approval will only be given if the Attorney General determines that the U.S. person is the agent of the foreign power. The President, in the end, automatically has power as well on the checks against the abuse. Addressing anticipated concerns that these limits still left the NSA with too much discretion. President Obama declared what the United States would not do. First, it would not collect communications content for the purpose of suppressing or burdening criticism or dissent, or for disadvantaging persons based on their ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, or religion. Second, it would not disseminate and store information regarding any persons based on criteria in Section 2.3 of Executive Order 12,300. That's not good enough. Executive Order 1233, I think is what it's supposed to be. Cases involving foreign intelligence or counterintelligence, public safety, or ascertainment of a potential intelligence source of credibility. Alright, to continue on the abuse of surveillance, the NSA's collection of foreign intelligence from foreign individuals and entities is designed to minimize the incidental or unintentional collection of communications to, from, or about U.S. persons. Also, the affirmative brought up that we about the whole, well, we brought it up as well. We brought up the terrorism. The affirmative team brought up the idea of that we cannot prove that terrorism is solved by the domestic surveillance. According to John Carlin, the Deputy Assistant Attorney General, states that international terrorists and domestic terrorists, although it may be impossible to assure 100% safety of terrorist attacks, that it is and should remain our goal, and that every day we should be doing everything we can within our existing authorities, ever mindful of our obligation to rule of law and civil liberties to prevent those attacks from occurring. Which also is again what my partner brought up about the social contract of the mindful in our obligation to the rule of law before our civil liberties to assure our safety. Also, James Lewis, a researcher from the Center of Strategic and International Studies, agrees the NSA said there were 54 cases that we were able to detect plans and stop them, and 50 of them led to arrests. Would you have preferred to have had 50 more Boston bombings? Data mining has allowed the NSA to put a stop to a number of international espionage plots. The original intent of these programs was to find foreign spies, he said. They haven't talked about that, but presumably there have been some successes there too. A lot of times when you see things and there doesn't appear to be any explanation of how we seem to magically know about it, it might very well be espionage. Also, no one, even in the critics, seems to doubt that the information gained from the NSA program has led to the successful prevention of Al-Qaeda plots against the United States. When pressed by reporters whether it has succeeded, where no other method would have, he said, I can unequivocally say unequivocally all right that we have gotten information through this program that would not otherwise have been available. And that is according to John Yo, a professor at the Law of University of California, Berkeley. All right, also continuing on the, what's the time?
Oh, 2:21.
Okay. The improvement team also brought up the idea of like racial profiling or searching people based on ethnicity or religion or period. So the NSA is currently working on, NSA with the other parts of the government is currently working on this whole idea of CODIS, which is genetic profiling. It is a new method that was supposed to help prevent the idea of like whether it's racial profiling or not. So here's like some background. CODIS doesn't contain an individual's DNA profile. It contains only 13 genetic markers known as junk markers that were specifically chosen because they are not correlated to physical and medical traits. Essentially, the markers used can only reveal the identity of a person and nothing else, just like fingerprinting. Decisions of a constitutional or legislative magnitude should not be based on the impression that all DNA sequence data will prove to be biologically significant and clinically applicable. Contrary to the impressions generated by hyperbolic media reports that 80% of the genome has been shown to be functional, no scientific publications state that 100% or even 80% of the genome makes organ function, stimulates tissue growth, turns normal cells into cancerous ones, makes us all tall, short, fat, or skinny, gay, or straight. The lack of detectable selection pressure on the CODIS loci is reassuring. Considering the interactions of multiple genes and environmental factors, it is a safe bet that no one will be able to deduce sexual orientation from either a fingerprint pattern or a CODIS profile. Also, if there's a fear of like the idea of hacking and getting information about people through the CODIS and the DNA, so fears that CODIS could be hacked and DNA profiles used for nefarious purposes also don't stand up to the evidence. First, assessing the database for non-law enforcement purposes is a serious crime and one that has never happened. Second, even if the database were assessed improperly, there's nothing in it other than those 13 DNA markers that I previously brought up. The names of the people to whom the DNA profile belong aren't stored in the database. Once there's a hit, law enforcement contacts the jurisdiction that uploaded the profile to find out who it belongs to. It's an extra level of protection that makes it pointless to even try to break it.
All right. Do you want prep time before cross-ex?
Yes. 2 minutes?
I don't know if that made sense to anyone.
Yes, 2 minutes is fine.
I feel like that made no sense to anyone.
You made sense.
Yeah? I played it sounds good, but I didn't like all.